You know what I've realized lately? That sooner or later you have to pay for past actions. And this can happen at the most unexpected moment. There will always be people who will hold a grudge against you for years, and you won't know when to expect a blow. When people are so offended and want to take revenge on their abuser, they see no boundaries and can do anything to achieve their goal. My story shows this perfectly.
My wife Grace and I had just finished our intimate evening. Lying next to her, I felt incredibly happy and relaxed. The room was quiet and Grace was softly snoring on her side. I reached out to turn off the lamp, ready to finally fall asleep, but at that moment, my phone unexpectedly fell to the floor. As I bent down to pick it up, my eyes caught sight of something under the bed. I turned on my phone's flashlight and discovered a condom wrapper. My heart raced. Grace and I didn't use condoms. She was on birth control pills and we weren't planning on having children, nor did we need condoms since we didn't have any diseases. So where did this wrapper come from? Damn, I muttered to myself. My heart froze with horror and confusion. I decided to put the wrapper back in its place and went back to bed. I couldn't come to terms with the thought that my wife, my love, could betray me. The next morning, I woke up and tried to act as usual. Breakfast with my wife was filled with mundane conversations, but deep down, I felt unbearable pain and confusion. When I returned home after work, the evening went as usual. We had dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. But when Grace fell asleep, I quietly got up and checked under the bed. The wrapper was gone. It was a confirmation of my worst fears. I lay in bed, thinking about what to do next. My name is Gregory Alvarado. I am an engineer by training and work in this field. I have always had enough money and never denied myself anything. I met Grace when she was working as a waitress in a cafe I often liked to visit. We didn't start dating right away. It began with light flirting, and then I decided to ask her out on a date, and after a year and a half, I proposed to her. Grace stopped working and began to focus on herself, practicing spiritual practices, meditation, and the like, eventually making good money from it. She gathered around her paying women who were tired of the routine and in poor mental health, and with the help of spiritual practices, she helped them find themselves again. She also regularly maintained her physical shape, counted her calories, and visited the gym. I restricted her in only one way. Men were not allowed in her circle. I was categorically against it, and initially, Grace indeed listened to me and focused exclusively on women. However, as her social media following grew, she became more recognizable, even among male audiences. To not violate my requirements, she introduced a separate course for men, conducting it through electronic communication. I wasn't against this, although I was skeptical. Thus, Grace held classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays for women and on Saturdays for men. Later, Grace expressed her desire to open enrollment for a separate men's group, as there was a lot of interest and she could earn more if the classes were held offline. I didn't like this, but Grace and I found a compromise. She suggested I attend her classes disguised as a regular man on Saturdays. I was, to put it mildly, against this, but Grace challenged me, and seeing how much she enjoyed it, I decided to let it be and supported her idea. The first few classes went well. I wasn't a fan of all this spiritual stuff, but for the sake of my own peace and to support my wife, I decided to sacrifice my sleep on Saturdays. After a few months of attending, I realized there was nothing to worry about. The classes were attended by mature, successful men, all of whom were married. Within a couple of months, I got to know each of the 10 regular attendees. As a result, I decided there was no longer any reason for me to attend the classes and stopped fully trusting my wife. After all, it's her job, which she enjoys, and I didn't want to be that controlling husband. Exactly 6 months after I stopped attending the classes, I now lie in bed, trying to figure out if there's a connection between my wife's classes and the condoms found under our bed. I realized the next few weeks would be very interesting. The next day, I contacted an acquaintance named Steve, whom I had met at a drunken party, and with whom I've occasionally kept in touch. Steve was knowledgeable about computers, so I asked him where I could buy surveillance equipment, including video cameras and listening devices. All this cost me a couple of $1,000s, but I was convinced it was worth it. While Grace was in the hall, I came home and installed cameras with a recording device. It was important for me to understand whether my wife was cheating on me or if the condoms were just a coincidence. When Grace returned, I went out to her car and installed a listening device right in the cabin and then returned to the house. As we sat down and ate, I decided to have a chat with Grace. "How was your day? How's work?" I asked. "Great. Tomorrow I'll be leading a group of men," she said. "Oh, cool. I'd like to go too," I blurted out unexpectedly, wanting to see her reaction. "Yeah, no problem. We'll go at 9 in the morning as usual," she said without a hint of doubt. I thought to myself, damn, I didn't want to go. The next day, Grace woke me up, and I went with her to the training. In my head, I even managed to justify the trip. I wanted to see how the group of men had changed and how many new faces there would be. To my surprise, more than half were people I had not seen before, which made my task more complicated. After the usual training session, this time I introduced myself to the newcomers as Grace's husband and mentioned that I also occasionally attend her sessions. I didn't catch any suspicious looks, and overall it seemed quite normal. We went home and spent the rest of the day there. Grace acted as usual, and I tried not to arouse any suspicions, though I was uncomfortable. The condom wrapper kept bothering me. Over the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. There were no signs or hints of infidelity. Nothing happened in our home while I was at work, and Grace didn't drive anyone in her car or say anything suspicious. I felt like I was wrongfully accusing my wife and needed to stop spying on her until I stumbled upon an interesting conversation. As usual, I waited for Grace to fall asleep, went down to the living room, and opened my laptop to review all the recordings. It took me about 2 hours, sometimes even more. While the surveillance cameras were easy to review, the listening device in the car was problematic. However, at one point, I stumbled upon an interesting conversation my wife had with a man. Their conversation was quite short. She was driving somewhere and suddenly picked up the phone and said, "I'll be at your place in a couple of minutes. I'm already approaching the plaza." The plaza was a hotel located 10 minutes drive from the sports hall where Grace usually trained. And this was my first major clue. I wanted to find out information from the hotel, whether any rooms were booked under my wife's name, but I wouldn't be given access to such data just like that. So I contacted my friend Steve again, who explained that I had 2 options, both illegal. Either hack into the hotel's system to get all the guest data, or give money to the administrator for access to all the information. The second option was more appealing to me, so I decided to start with it. On Monday, when my wife had a day off and was at the gym, I decided to visit the hotel to get more details. The administrator turned out to be a woman, quite young and apparently a student, so at first I offered her $500 for the information on all the hotel's clients for the past month, but she threatened to call the police and insisted that I leave the hotel as soon as possible. However, I persisted, and eventually, the administrator called the hotel owner, who invited me to a cafe. He was an adult man with a beard, around 40 to 45 years old. The administrator told him that I was trying to illegally obtain personal information about the guests, and Donald, the owner's name, said he would handle it. We sat down in the cafe, and he began to inquire why I needed such valuable information. Before I could answer, he directly asked, "Do you suspect your wife of cheating?" "Yes. How did you figure that out?" I asked. "Do you think you're the only one who has come to the hotel wanting information about the clients? 80% of our regular guests are lovers who rent rooms for a day, spend just a couple of hours, and then leave. Plus, our prices are democratic, attracting lovers," he explained. I told him that for 2 weeks, I had been watching my wife through hidden cameras and listening devices, but it gave me nothing except a lead on the hotel. All right, I'll help you. But first, you need to give me a photo of your wife and the days she's often not at home, and you can't monitor her, he said. And after a few seconds, he added, also, I need you to cover the potential lost profits for half a year, but we'll calculate that when we catch your wife. Talk about a businessman, I thought to myself, and agreed to his terms. I provided him with the days my wife was often away from home, Tuesday and Thursday, because according to her, those were her busiest days. I also gave him a photo of Grace. Donald and I said goodbye, and he promised to call me back within a few hours once he had analyzed all the information. Meanwhile, I went home and called Grace. Sweetheart, hello, I'm heading home. Do you want me to buy anything? I asked. No, thank you, dear. I'll stop by myself. I'm still at practice and will be home in a couple of hours. Love you, she said, and I reciprocated her feelings. I arrived home and, as usual, started checking the cameras, but alas, there was nothing on them. Not even a small hint. However, barely 20 minutes after I got home, Donald called me. Gregory, sorry to bother you, but right now, your wife is cheating on you with Mr. Bauer, who books rooms in our hotel at least 3 times a week. I didn't manage to listen further and darted out of the house, utterly unexpected for me. So I just got in my car and drove. I didn't even know what to say or do in such situations. I was shaking all over. As soon as I arrived at the hotel, I didn't see my wife's car, but Donald approached me. He handed me a photograph and asked, "Is this your wife?" The photo showed Grace walking hand in hand with Peter, whom I recognized instantly. I didn't know his last name, but I recognized him from the photo immediately. This guy had been attending the sessions since they started in an offline format, and I was shocked because he was married. I had talked to him several times, and he had told me about it himself, so I would never have suspected him. Then Donald handed me another piece of paper. We also quickly analyzed their attendance over the last few months and found out that if they stop visiting our hotel now, we will lose $5,000. You need to pay this. And of course, this price is with a discount. I was in total shock. My wife was cheating on me, and he was talking about money. I'll pay later, I need to go inside now. No. That's not how things are done. First, the money, then the keys to the room where your wife is frolicking, said that miserable wretch. If I pay you a part of the sum now and the rest later, would that be acceptable to you? I asked. Better to pay the full amount all at once. Why are you not taking my work seriously? And if you pay an extra $3,000 on top, we will include our security service and a videographer who happens to be our handsome and fragrant administrator, he said. This started to irritate me. It felt like he was deliberately wasting time, so I just told him off and went angrily to the hotel. But at the entrance, I was unexpectedly met by a security guard who told me my entry was denied. I turned around and looked at Donald, who hadn't moved an inch. He looked back at me and tapped his watch with his finger, signaling that I needed to pay up right now. Here's $2,000 in cash, the rest after. I'll go to the ATM and withdraw the remaining money, I said, handing him the money. Deal, but the rate has gone up by $1,500, so you'll need to pay an additional $4,000, he said. Have you lost your mind? Why the sudden increase? I asked angrily, unable to contain myself. Because when I offered you $5,000, I wasn't messing around, and now, for the trouble I've been through, you'll need to pay extra, he replied. Damn, I said. Fine, I agree. But please, just give me the key and tell me the room number, and I'll be on my way. Here you go. Just make sure you keep it quiet. No police, Romeo, he said, and I thought to myself, what a fool he was. I entered the hotel and quickly found the room I was looking for. Before opening the door, I paused to listen for any sounds, but it was silent. I wanted to catch my wife in the act of cheating, to capture the whole process on camera. I gathered my thoughts, turned on the camera, inserted the key into the lock, and swiftly turned it to find myself in the room where, at that very moment, sex was happening on the bed. My wife was in a doggy position, and behind her stood Peter Bauer, both of them naked, with calm, romantic music playing in the background. Their content faces quickly turned to confusion. "What the hell are you doing here, Gregory?" Grace asked quickly. "I thought an adult film was being shot here, so I decided to play the role of the cameraman," I said sarcastically, and ended the recording, as I had captured the main material. Then I slammed the door shut and locked it. "Well, now we're going to have a threesome," I said, while Grace and her lover were putting on their underwear. Grace got up from the bed and approached me. "Sit down, I'll explain everything to you." At that moment, Peter was putting on his pants and was about to leave the room. Wait, you're leaving already? Got scared? Or are you going to look for your wedding ring that you accidentally lost somewhere?" He tried to slip past me, but I grabbed him by the hair and turned him towards me, spat in his face, and with a kick sent him out of the room, and he ran down the corridor. Grace was very nervous. She struggled to find the words and even knelt before me. "Darling, I'll explain everything. Please sit down," she said. "Why bother? I've seen everything with my own eyes. That's enough for me," I said. "Let me explain, please," she said, her hands trembling, begging me to sit on a chair. I didn't comply with her request and, with a sad expression, began to ask her questions. "How long have you been having an affair with him behind my back?" Grace shared that she met Peter online, and he was the first guy who showed interest in her and insisted that Grace conduct offline sessions. He showed her attention, but Grace put him in his place, stating she had a beloved husband and needed no one else. As soon as I stopped attending the sessions, thinking everything was fine, Peter became more active and started making advances towards Grace with greater enthusiasm. Initially, these were just regular restaurant outings, and Grace justified them to herself as just spending time with a friend. However, Peter became more persistent and began requesting private sessions. This went on for about 5 weeks until Peter and Grace ended up in bed together. Grace, in telling all this, didn't try to play the victim. She fully understood what she was getting into and explained her infidelity by her desire for new emotions and adrenaline. She also mentioned that she knew about the cameras and listening devices, understanding that sooner or later I would catch her in the act of infidelity, and she was just reluctantly waiting for that moment. She saw it as a game. Initially, she met with her lover once a week in a hotel. Then she decided to raise the stakes and started meeting him twice a week. Eventually, she got carried away and could cheat for 5 days straight, knowing I would never find out. She knew I trusted her and wanted to see how far she could go. She also lied to me about her work. I always knew her daily schedule, but there were days she was supposed to have sessions with women, which didn't exist. Instead, she spent time with Peter, thrilled by the fact that I was oblivious for 6 months. After being with Peter, she would go to the gym to work out intensely and take a shower there to remove any scent of a man. She wasn't even afraid to leave her phone near me because she knew I would never look through it. She shared several instances where her phone was right in front of me, receiving messages from Peter, and I never checked her phone, even though it wasn't locked. She thought everything was perfect, and she and Peter had reached a new level. I left for work that morning. She assumed my wife would stay home all day, but then so it was, except for one thing. Peter was at our house with my wife, having sex with her. He left 1 hour before I arrived home. Grace had to clean up after them and pretend skillfully that she had been alone all day while she missed me. Every time I took bold decisions for her, the chances of her making a mistake also increased. That's what happened when she forgot to throw away a pack of condoms left under our bed, and then she saw the hidden camera I had installed and realized I was monitoring her. I started to suspect her of cheating. She reduced the number of times she met Peter, but that didn't stop her from making a second mistake. While driving, she said the name of a hotel. Grace also thought that I had installed a navigation system in her car and on her phone, so she always parked her car near the gym and left her phone there when she went to the hotel. She felt elusive. "Yeah," I said sarcastically, "and that was exactly what it turned out to be. I needed to give you a certificate." Grace also mentioned that the sex with Peter was terrible. Now, I understood why I had not seen any obvious signs of cheating. We had been doing well in bed, and she had not given me any reason to feel jealous. But at the same time, she was brazenly unfaithful to me right under my nose. I did not know what to say to her. Then, what she said next left me shocked. Grace asked me if I remembered when she was in high school. Everyone bullied her because she was fat, and no one wanted to be her friend. The worst person was Peter Bauer. He even hit her. After they graduated from high school, they did not see each other again for over 8 years. After so much time had passed, Grace realized that Peter had been the guy who bullied her all along and gave her a hard life. However, it was surprising that he did not recognize her. He did not even remember the girl who he had bullied at school. Grace felt offended and wanted revenge against Peter. She specifically opened enrollment for classes with men and began flirting with Peter, after which Peter himself started making advances towards Grace, and she realized that this was a real opportunity. Peter was the chief director at one of the companies that developed software for personal computer users. Grace also knew that Peter had a wife and 2 children and lived quite comfortably. Grace gained access to Peter's accounts, and he repeatedly shared his company's trade secrets with her. He told her everything, and even provided her with a separate bank account into which he deposited money monthly. However, instead of spending it, Grace saved the money over 6 months, accumulating about $300,000. Peter fell head over heels in love with Grace, but he wanted her to continue being his mistress, and she boldly took advantage of this. She realized she had gone too far, but she was afraid to confess everything to me, so she deliberately left a condom package under the bed and specifically mentioned the name of a hotel, even though she wasn't talking on the phone at that moment. Even the hotel owner, Donald, was involved in this. Donald knew about Grace's plan. I listened to all this and couldn't believe my ears. Grace started with getting a thrill from cheating and ended with it being her plan for revenge against her offender, and I didn't know what to believe. Grace was very smart, and I didn't overlook the fact that it could be true, but I needed evidence. But Grace unexpectedly said, "I'll understand if you want to divorce me. After all, there was infidelity, and I acted extremely foolishly. But I want you to know that I love you, and all this is true." She handed me her phone and played a video recording she had made 8 months ago, where she talked about her plan and that she didn't want to involve me. She didn't want me to interfere. I was in total shock, my brain was boiling, and I needed time to think it all over. Grace and I went home, and she asked me to give her the opportunity to complete her plan. She wanted to utterly destroy Peter. First, she sent her lawyer to Peter's wife, claiming that her husband was cheating on her with Grace. After that, she wanted Peter to lose his job and sent anonymous letters with the company's secret data presented to her by Peter, demanding his termination, or else the information would be released publicly. As a result, Peter's wife filed for divorce, and the company sought to sue Peter for disclosing such confidential information. Ultimately, Peter lost his job and was ordered to pay a fine of $800,000 to avoid criminal charges. He also lost his family, as his wife left him with their children. Moreover, Grace filed a lawsuit against Peter, accusing him of blackmail and coercion into non-consensual intimacy. With the help of expensive lawyers, she won the case and, thanks to Peter, our family budget was replenished by $600,000. This whole affair took 6 months, and Grace and I continued to live together. After this incident, Grace closed the men's club and became gentler and more affectionate. I felt her love for me, and I loved her back. I still couldn't believe what had happened to us, and I decided not to divorce her, but warned her to inform me if she wanted to embark on another adventure. Meanwhile, we bought a new house, upgraded our cars, flew to the Maldives, and are expecting our first child. Everything is going well for us.
That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. It will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new, equally interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!